This week, cryptocurrency is the new attractive investment alternative in the West and in Africa. In 2022, the Central African Republic became the second country in the world after El Salvador to adopt the cryptocurrency Bitcoin as legal tender. Nigeria and South Africa are leading the way in cryptocurrency investments. But what is cryptocurrency? Who stands to gain from it? Who controls it? And who is investing in it? Straight Talk Africa starts right now. Welcome to Straight Talk Africa, coming to you from our headquarters here in Washington, D.C. I'm your host, Vincent McCory. Cryptocurrency is not bound by geography. Since it's internet-based, its transactions are stored in a database called blockchain, which is a group of connected computers that record transactions in real time. Also, cryptocurrency is not regulated the way a country's banking system is, which may create opportunities, but is also volatile. But let's start with the basics, and for that we turn to our technology reporter, Paul Ndio. Paul, let's first just break it down. What is cryptocurrency?
Thanks, Vincent. To put it simply, cryptocurrency is just digital money that works on a technology called blockchain. How does it work? Blockchain is transparent in the sense that everything that happens on that platform is recorded. So you have a ledger of sorts. If you're looking for records, you can find those records. Unlike in the traditional sense where we use cash, in blockchain, there is no cash involved. When you're using cryptocurrencies, there's no cash involved. So it's just a bunch of people who have agreed to a term of payment, and they're using computers or digits or codes to make transactions happen. Yes. But no cash is involved.
Yes. We did mention some African countries have embraced cryptocurrency. There are more that we are seeing, and the extent to which, to what extent are some of those countries actually using cryptocurrency?
Thanks for that. Yes, in Africa, there are a couple countries that have used cryptocurrencies. The first one to go at it was the Central African Republic. In 2021, they came up with this system called to supplement the CFA. But it didn't go as well as expected. It has struggled, but a lot of people, when you look at the infrastructure in Central African Republic, is not at par with most of the African countries, so they struggled a little bit. But over the years, they have managed to make it their legal tender. There are other countries that are using it. For example, Nigeria has done a remarkable job using cryptocurrencies. I've dealt with people who want to pay me in cryptocurrencies, but for it to work, you have to be in a marketplace where you cannot just go on a computer and use Bitcoin or any other coin to make a transaction. You have to be signed into a marketplace. Let's say Coinbase, OpenSea. There are other platforms where you need to make those transactions. And very briefly, there are countries that have done very well. For example, Turkey was experiencing high inflation, and they introduced what they call a stable coin. So what the stable coin did is stabilized the economy. Now about 4.5% of their GDP has transacted through Bitcoin.
Yes. Well, now countries in sub-Saharan Africa that face high inflation seem to be more prone to adapt different kinds of cryptocurrency as a way of to preserve savings and invest. For insight into this complex reality, we bring in our expert from London. I'm joined by Bright Simmons, a social innovator and entrepreneur. Welcome, Bright, to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you for having me, Vincent.
Yes.
Nice to be here.
It's really a pleasure. Now, we have introduced cryptocurrency. We kind of mentioned some of the countries that have embraced it and have tried to use it. First, for you, how do you gauge the literacy level of cryptocurrency and investing in cryptocurrency across Africa?
It's entirely demographic. So young people, some say the Gen Z generation, they are native with this whole crypto thing, and because they have access to the internet, they explore widely. For them, there's nothing really arcane at all about cryptocurrencies. Older people, on the other hand, I would say Gen X and above, much more complicated. They get it as a kind of asset, and they feel like people are buying, they hear about people buying Bitcoin and other things like that, but they don't really understand the full range of possibilities and opportunities.
Now, talking about those opportunities, what opportunities does cryptocurrency present to Africans that they need to know, so that those who are standing on the sidelines or don't know yet can try to find out more about it?
So if you think of the crypto space right now, you have 3 or so broad categories. You've got the transactional currencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the rest of it. And these are trying to replicate cash. So they're trying to get to a point where they are valuable enough that people will see them as a permanent store of value, and they will use them for transactions. That has been very difficult, the transactions level. But in terms of being able to store value in them, I think they've done much better. Then you have the second category, which you might refer to as the meme coins. So these are much harder to describe, much harder to pin down. But generally, they are speculative instruments. They are kind of like, the kind of solutions that every now and then pop up in traditional finance. We call them Ponzi schemes, we call them other things, but they are driven by sentiment. And here you have high risk stakers, people that are adventurous. They go in for these things and try and outsmart each other by trying to buy in just when it's high enough and exiting just before it turns. Then the third category, much more complicated, smart contracts, solutions like NFTs. This is when you extend the underlying technologies of these cryptocurrencies, what you mentioned already, blockchain, you extend them into multiple applications in the financial world. Then you are able to go beyond just trying to mimic cash or to ride on speculation. You're able to do far more complicated things. So those are the 3 broad categories of opportunities that I imagine. You mentioned earlier on about stable coins. Yes, go ahead, Vincent.
No. It's a question. I think you're kind of going into that. I wanted to ask about the fact that they're not regulated. There's no central place. Is that an advantage, or should that be of concern to those who are interested to know about it?
So some countries are attempting regulation in fits and starts. So in the US, there's been talk around the fact that the Securities and Exchanges Commission, despite not having explicitly authorized crypto, does not go after certain types of crypto transactions, like those that are Bitcoin based. And we are now beginning to see things like exchange traded funds that are linked to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others. Of course, if you go beyond a certain range and you think that investors are not protected, or you are trying to swindle investors, they come very hard at you. So you might say that's quasi-regulated. Then you have, countries that are much more explicit in regulating these instruments, like in Singapore and others, where they are trying to get ahead of the curve. And then several other countries are, laying out the vision for how a regulated crypto ecosystem is concerned. So when you say it's not regulated, you probably mean in most African countries, and that is true. In most African countries, we don't yet have, any indication that there is a blueprint for regulation that is coming up. You don't have the protection of the law in certain instances, but even so, some of the general criminal laws like fraud, some of the general laws around commerce may still come to your aid, except that the key difference is regulated industries often mean licensing of providers of particular services and goods. So in this case, when we say it's not regulated, what really we are talking about is that a lot of the providers of these meme coins or other crypto solutions are not licensed. Not licensed means that someone with the right authority and capacity has not looked carefully at them and then determined that these are trustworthy. So that is the issue. But you have to recall, the whole point of crypto, what makes it alluring, what makes it charming, is that there are no intermediaries. It's trustless. You don't have to trust someone before you deal with them. The whole point of regulation is to increase trust. is to say that you could trust this player or not, or that you can trust this provider and not that provider. So in a way, regulation is somewhat in conflict with the true tenets of crypto. That notwithstanding, there are a lot of crypto enthusiasts and some crypto businesses today that actively yearn for regulation, that are trying to actually convince the government to regulate them. So it's a fascinating contrast of values and principles and whatnots.
Mm-hmm. And we'll look a bit into that. But Paul, in terms of the infrastructure, every kind of investment, every type of trading out there, we always think about what is the infrastructure that is necessary for that venture to succeed. We talked about, computer. We know that is where cryptocurrency operates, primarily. Basically, that's where it operates. How does that, play out on the continent where sometimes people talk about poor connectivity or no connectivity at all in some countries?
That's still a very, very big challenge when it comes to cryptocurrency infrastructure. Take, for example, for it to work very, very well, you need data centers or mining centers that are powered almost 24/7. For example, I tried to do Bitcoin mining myself, but I didn't realize that I needed to keep my server running for a very long time. And by the time I figured it out, I had used so much power that it was like as if I had a factory in my house, right? So you need to be cognizant of that and know when to invest in it. A lot of Africans who are doing Bitcoin, they just do it on a laptop or on a computer, so they don't have that infrastructure. People here who are invested deeply in cryptocurrencies, they have the data centers where all these transactions take place. So for us to get to that point where we feel like we can use cryptocurrencies as a legal tender, we need to have that infrastructure in place. You can't just do it on a laptop.
Yes, sure. And now we're also being joined by one of our other experts, and from right here in the United States in Falls Church. And this is Mr. Musi Haile. He's the CEO of Moya Technologies and founder of Revolt Cypher Blockchain Service. Welcome to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we've been talking quite a bit about, the opportunities that exist with cryptocurrency. And just for your, for the kind of operations you have, who do you see mostly kind of warming up to the kind of advice you provide and the services you provide, especially from the continent of Africa?
So I'm starting to see governments starting to warm up a little bit in the areas of regulations. And then on the other side that governments are looking at is how do we leverage this to streamline processes, show transparencies. That's one of the areas that I'm looking at. And then there are small businesses that are trying to figure out how to provide access to the crypto market is another area that I'm looking at, as well as U.S. companies coming into the continent doing similar type of stuff, setting up exchanges, doing some kind of platforms that they're building for companies, for citizens to start using. To me, I was listening to some of your conversations. The biggest issue right now in the continent is not having regulatory policies. That's the biggest issue. And they don't need to build everything from the ground zero. They can leverage other existing policies. And I just saw a couple of days ago, Kenya is putting up a virtual asset draft policy. And so it's a good way of doing things. The U.S. is trying to do similar things with the new administration. They just put up what's called the Genius Act. The Senate is putting together a regulatory process. But in the continent, again, it's just government is warming up, but there's a lot of small businesses and startups that are definitely trying to adapt into the market.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's time now for a short break. When we return, we'll continue our discussion on cryptocurrency in Africa. Stay with us.
times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
They try to forget everything they left behind while calming their thoughts in the process. This is what women and girls try to do to cope with the mental health crisis they are enduring amid a relentless war in the Eastern DRC. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we zoom in on the effects of the brutal conflict in the Eastern DRC has on women, how they're coping, and how they are trying to ease their mental anguish. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
Welcome back. You are with Straight Talk Africa, coming to you live from our headquarters in Washington. We are discussing the rise of the adoption of cryptocurrency in Africa. My guests are Bright Simmons, a social innovator and entrepreneur, and Mose Haile, CEO, Moya Technologies, and founder of Revolt Cypher blockchain service. Now, I want to focus on the blockchain technology and the traceability it provides, not when it comes to coins, but also for products traded, land registration, medical records. Mose, I'll come to you first with that question. How does this work, and how does it help the consumer?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite things to do. This is what I specialize in. From a traceability perspective, if you take last year, there's a program called EUDR, which is European Union Deforestation Regulation. Every exporter from Africa, not only Africa, but from worldwide, they're supposed to provide a compliance to the European Union before they ship their product. The US is starting to do that with the FDA traceability side of the house. Anything that comes in from fruits and vegetables into the supermarkets, restaurant, they need to do that. Where blockchain comes in, or traceability comes in, is you need to be able to go back to the farm, figure out when it was planted, what kind of chemicals it was used. If the land was, forested a week ago and now it's deforested, that's some of the things. So we at Moya Tech / Revolt Cypher, we have developed a product that actually does compliance and traceability of fruits and vegetables from farm to table, all the way from when it was planted to when it was harvested, as well as when it gets into the container. You have IoT sensors that provide. So that type of solution is needed in the continent. Today, when you ship any product, it can get to a port somewhere in Europe or Middle East, and they can say, oh, this is, you're not in compliance. And when you're not in compliance, not only do you have to pay the exporter, not only does he have to pay for shipping the product into the country, but they have to pay for disposal of the product. So where products like ours comes in is in the compliance. Before it leaves the country, we make sure the farmer or the exporter are in compliant to the country's regulatory processes. That's one thing that I see. I've seen the same solution been applied for land registration. I've seen the same solution been applied for medical records exchange, where with medical records you have a personal information, so blockchain gives you that privacy, that security angle to it. And then document side as well, which is legal documents. If you want to share, let's say I live in the U.S. and I want to share, part of attorney with someone in the continent, you could use this type of solution to provide that capability.
And of course, we want to be sure that all those the information about my documents will be safe on the blockchain. I want to go to Bright. This sounds fairly revolutionary, but I think it still sounds like it's a very peripheral in its application. Let's talk about a bit about the cash crunch. Some see this as perhaps the solution in Africa to cash crunch, or sometimes this volatility in currencies across countries. Is it being seen that way? Is anybody kind of pushing this as a way to realistically address that issue?
So before I go into the cash issues, I just wanted to touch on very briefly on the traceability angle. As you are aware, our organization, mPedigree, this is what we've also been doing. And the fascinating thing is that we started doing traceability 3 years before October 28, 2008, when Satoshi Nakamoto wrote the first blockchain paper, which more or less launched Bitcoin. So that tells you that the traceability concept itself is not necessarily reliant on blockchain or crypto. So we've been doing this for medicines, for agro inputs, and for things like that. Where cryptocurrency or blockchain brings an interesting dimension, it's a fascinating debate. It's the argument that you cannot trust any intermediaries. So essentially, if you went into Nigeria and you said this medicine is good medicine, you will be able to use a traceability solution that has been in that country since 2010 to check that that medicine is original. The question is whether or not you trust the regulators who are giving you this assurance. And this is where blockchain doesn't necessarily solve that problem, because we call it the analog hole. You always need an actual non-digital player to still tell you whether this is true or not. So if you think about the land, for instance, somebody still has to go there and look at the land and confirm that this digital record maps to this geolocation. And yes, there's a government that has the power that says that we recognize this authority to issue you with this title. The digital layer on top of it can be completely secure, but if that underlying process doesn't work, if you don't trust the government, if you don't trust the inspector, if you don't trust the surveyor, then the whole blockchain thing falls apart. So these analog holes means, therefore, that the trustlessness on which classical blockchain was based upon no longer holds, because for a lot of real-world applications, you need to figure out an underlying trust mechanism. And that is where those of us that are social innovators or social entrepreneurs, we differ a little bit from the pure technical proponents of this solution.
And you
in regards of cash, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, you said the premise was that you don't have to trust somebody, no intermediary. But it looks like from what you're saying, again, that theory is not necessarily working perfectly as might have been, anticipated earlier on.
Yes, my argument is that so long as there's an underlying social governance issue, and in addition to technology, governance is the other thing I do. So long as there's an underlying social governance issue, you will always need to trust some intermediaries. The process will be, how does the technology encourage accountability and transparency so that you can trust them, not that you can remove them from the chain. So I think there is a post-classical vision of blockchain that people like myself are pushing. And of course, we started doing this traceability stuff long before blockchain, like I tried to mention earlier on. And in cash, it's the same thing, really. So right now in Africa, the stable coin movement is based on this logic. Think of USDT, for instance. They can link to a currency outside their home jurisdiction. So say you live in Nigeria, where there's a lot of inflation, a lot of exchange rate depreciation, same in Ghana. But because blockchain is borderless, you could have this instrument that links to the US dollar, and then you can get it through your own local currency. Essentially, you can use the Naira, which is a local currency in Nigeria, or the Cedi, which is a local currency in Ghana, to buy this intermediate instrument, which is the blockchain-based crypto or meme coin or whatever, in this case, let's say USDT, and then that will be linked to the dollar. So in a way, you create a safe harbor. It's a sanctuary away from the fiscal turmoil that you are used to. The issue, though, is that you are still trusting the US government, because for that link to be valuable, the dollar must preserve its value. Then people say, oh, well, we can link it to gold. Yes, but a lot of the linkages to gold still relies on international gold certification, vaults, that says that the gold is real and the gold is there. So you still have to trust some intermediaries. My point is that we are moving beyond the classical libertarian notions of blockchain that began the movement. And now we begin to think about how we merge the social governance aspect, where we make trust feasible. So we are trust engineers. We elevate trust rather than remove trust.
Yeah, it looks like Satoshi may not have anticipated some of these pitfalls. But Muse, it looks like with the kind of approach you have, from what Bright is saying, there is a big part that governments in Africa have to play for the kind of the ideas you have to really work and be trustworthy to people who are using blockchain to secure their documents or the kind of information that you talk about.
Yeah. So to me, like Brian is saying, stable coin has become kind of the go-to in the last, 12 months or so within the continent. The likes of Circle or Tether are, and then even PayPal is playing in this market. Where I see is the current central banks within the continent are not really open to changes. It's very, very hard to do this. Where I see them playing a major role is how do we take the country's sovereign wealth, if there is any, in this case, from the continent perspective, there's minerals, that will take time to validate, and there's enough gold or there's enough uranium, whatever it is in the continent, and how do you peg that against some kind of currency, some kind of token or meme, whatever it is you want to call it. Yes, right now we're tied to USD, we're tied to the euros in terms of Circle and Tether and everybody like that. There is going to be a lot of need going back to the regulatory process. And then the central banks have to be open to adapt to this new way of doing things. It solves a lot of problems. I don't have to go get, USD or euro. I can use my Naira, or I can use my shillings, or I can use my birr or my nakfa, anywhere in the world. That's the whole idea behind stablecoin. So again, to me, with the way I'm looking at it is, central banks have a major role to play here in adapting to whether it is CDBC kind of concept is another idea that central banks needed to look at as well. So.
Well, it looks like there's much more we need to talk about, but time is really against us. We have to leave it right here. Bright Simmons, social innovator and entrepreneur, and Muse Haile, CEO, Moya Technologies, and founder of Revolt Cypher Blockchain Service, and of course, my colleague Paul Dio here. Thank you both for the thought-provoking discussion. We appreciate your time, and thanks to our affiliate stations for broadcasting Straight Talk Africa across the continent. I'll see you next time.